this presentation. Um, Intake strategies and testing accommodations for students with disabilities. A little bit about myself. My name is Sheila Brandis. I'm the teacher for the classes for stroke and brain injury survivors, which is a class offered through the Robbinsdale Adult Academic Program. It's a class for people who had a stroke or a brain injury as an adult and are interested in relearning basic academic skills. And I've been the teacher of that program since 2014. I'm also a certified brain injury specialist. That's a certification that you can get through the Brain Injury Association of America. And I earned that in 2016. And since January of this year, I've been the PANDA specialist. So I'm here to give this presentation on thinking about how we can identify and help students with disabilities right in the intake process as a PANDA representative. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of the PANDA resources that we've developed for this particular topic. And if you have any questions at any time, you can email me or call me, and I'd be happy to talk with you or answer any questions that you have. I've been using some of these resources that I'm going to tell you about in my own class for a long time because I also do the intake for my students. So I've been using some of these strategies that PANDA has come up with for us. So for our objectives for today, I'm hoping that by the end of this session that you will learn about and be able to incorporate what we call the one question into the intake process, and that you will be able to conduct a student interview, which will help you to identify learning challenges that a student might have, and also to be prepared to use common testing accommodations when students arrive for their intake. But first, I'm just going to take a brief moment to talk about PANDA. Some of you might have heard of PANDA, or some of you might be not quite sure what PANDA does. But PANDA is an acronym that stands for Physical and Non-Apparent Disability Assistance. It is a support service provider for Minnesota adult basic education programs. So we are here to provide knowledge and resources and support to programs as you attempt to help students with disabilities to achieve their academic goals. And just briefly, the services that we offer, we have through PANDA, we have disability consultative services. So we're happy to talk with teachers and staff and programs about any concerns they might have about students with disabilities or that they suspect might have disabilities. And we also have something on our website called the Adult Learner Intervention, which you can go through anytime because it's an online, sort of almost like a flow chart or a process where you can go through steps to try to get at the root cause of what a person's challenges might be and to learn some strategies and some accommodations for them in the classroom. We also have a lending library of adaptive equipment. So we've got magnifiers and different kinds of color overlays and CCTVs for vision, low vision, and we've got adaptive keyboards and adaptive mice and a variety of different things to help students in the classroom. We offer professional development, so like at this workshop at this class, at this conference. And we have online classes on Canvas as well about disabilities and mental health challenges. And then we have a website, which I'm just going to take a brief moment to show you guys because it's just full of lots of great information. If you ever have a question about anything having to do with a disability, you might want to check out PANDA because we've got a lot here to offer you. So just a couple things to note. This is the homepage that you come to, and if you just scroll down a little bit, there's two ways right down here. Let's see, maybe I'll use this. Two ways to contact us. You can send us an email, or you can fill out a helpline form, disability helpline forms, kind of like a Google form, but it's a different platform. And we will get back to you as soon as we can. And then I mentioned that we have professional development. So you can see that up at the top of the website. There's a PD tab there. And We also have here on the right-hand side categories, disability categories. So there's just like lots of different kinds of disabilities listed here alphabetically. And if you click on any of them, let's say click on brain injury, it's going to give you a lot more information about brain injury. It's going to give you like an overview, how you might diagnose, well, not diagnose it, but maybe identify it in your classroom. Going to talk about challenges in the classroom, instructional strategies to use in the classroom, how this might impact English language learners, and resources outside of the classroom as well. So all of these disabilities over here will have a similar kind of page with all this different kinds of information. So I just wanted to show you guys that so that you could be aware of it because it's a great resource. Okay, so back to our presentation in general. All right, so we're going to start with what we have called the one question. So if a person arrives in your program to register for classes, they might have an apparent disability. You can see it. You know, they might have a wheelchair, or they might have some kind of paralysis on one part of their body, or they might be even using a cane, or, you know, there might be something that you can really see. But a lot of times you can't see a disability. They're invisible or they're not apparent right away. So this might be like brain injury or mental health challenges, for instance. You're not going to know that they have a disability unless they disclose it to you. So sometimes if a student doesn't disclose it, you know, or they've never been asked if they have a disability, then we don't know about it. And they might start classes, and only after a certain amount of time has gone by, a teacher might feel like the student's not really making progress, or they're exhibiting certain sorts of challenges in the classroom, and then they have to spend some time trying to figure out what's going on or what they might be able to do to help the student. So trying to kind of bring this question back to the earlier in the process, to the intake process, Panda has one question that you can incorporate into your intake process to help identify students who have disabilities. So the question is on our website. So I'm going to go back to the website. I'm going to be flipping back and forth to the website quite a bit. This is going to be under the Forms tab up here at the top. So just click there and scroll down. It's right here called Supplemental Disability Registration Forms. We have these in lots of different languages, but the top one here is English. And let's see if I can make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so here's the one question. So you don't have to write it down necessarily. It's on the Panda website. The question is, have you ever been diagnosed with a condition that could impact your learning, such as mental health, ADHD, developmental disability, learning disability, brain injury, vision loss, or hearing loss, etc. So if a person were to check yes, then that is just allowing you to take some time to find out a little bit more about what's going on with that student, what their challenges might be, and what kinds of accommodations might be needed. And even sometimes if a person's even an appropriate fit for an adult education program. But you're finding that out right away, so you're going to be able to start trying to learn a little bit more about that student right away at the beginning. In addition to like being good for you and the program or for the student, really, it's also great for the students who might be arriving there with a certain anxiety about reentering education, because oftentimes people who have a disability have experienced some kind of difficulty in school, and so they might be feeling anxious or perhaps a little bit pessimistic or skeptical about how they're going to do this time around. So just having a question like this that you ask people about can give a signal that you are interested in them, that you care about them, and you want to learn more about what you can do to help them. And I should just say that all of these questions, like this is totally voluntary. A person could answer yes, they could put no, or they could just not answer the question at all. So it's always a voluntary situation. Okay, so I don't know if there's any questions that I should be answering right now or keep going. I'm not really sure what you think, Deanna, but I'll just continue for now, I guess. Okay, so let's say someone does check yes to this question. So then we can move on to this next part of the form, which is called the supplemental registration form. And this form is going to allow you to conduct a brief interview with the student in order to try to learn more about them, right? To find out more about what it is that's going on with them. And just a note that this form is confidential. It should be kept confidential. And that does, that raises some questions, like how do you go about keeping it confidential? That I hope that we can kind of maybe chat about a little bit later. So we'll come back to the issue of confidentiality in a little bit. But I'm just going to go through this form somewhat quickly, but I want to let you know what's in it. And I also want to say right off the bat that this is a form that we provide and you can use it as is, or your program can change it up a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit overwhelming on the page. Maybe you can simplify it a little bit or kind of change it however you want. So it's a suggestion, right? This isn't like the one way to do it. This is just a suggestion. But okay, so this first part of the form asks the student whether they received any special education services or extra help in school. So that might be like if they went through the K-12 system in the US, they might have had an individualized education plan or an IEP, or they might have had a 504 plan. So just briefly, if you're not familiar with what those are basically a legal document entered into between a student and their family and the school district. Every student has the right to an appropriate public education. So an IEP focuses on providing students with an individualized learning program, like individualized instruction, and that can mean different things. It can mean small group instruction, or perhaps shorter assignments or modified testing or something like that. And the 504 plan is oftentimes it's a similar kind of legal document that deals more with making sure that a student has an appropriate environment, appropriate classroom situation, and access to adaptive equipment that they might need to be successful. So a student can let you know whether they've had any of those things, and specifically what their disability was that led to having these special ed services in school. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or perhaps a specific learning disorder, developmental cognitive disabilities, emotional behavioral disability. You don't have to be the expert on what all of these things mean. This is just an opportunity for the student to let you know what they have experienced in their past. And they can let you know what kind of support that they received. Was it small group instruction, one-on-one instruction, extended time on tests, etc. Okay, so a lot of times people, especially coming from different countries, perhaps were not offered extra services or extra help, special education services in school. So they're going to check no, maybe. Maybe doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have a disability, but maybe they just didn't really have that assistance. Sometimes people might have gotten an IEP in school. Maybe they know that they did, but they're not really quite sure. Maybe they can't quite remember, or they, don't really, weren't really, maybe if it was as when they were a child, maybe they just are not really sure of all the details, or even if they have a copy of that plan, so things might be a little bit fussy, not fussy, what am I saying? Fuzzy, but sometimes you can still gain some information from people. Okay, and then the rest of the form is asking students whether they've been diagnosed with any of the following conditions, which could impact their learning. And there's examples of each condition. So was anything having to do with mental health, such as depression or anxiety, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, any kind of developmental disability that would include like autism, Down syndrome, any visual difficulties such as vision loss or blurry vision, words kind of moving around on the page, hearing difficulties, any physical limitations, mobility challenges that might impact their ability to function in the classroom, um, acquired brain injury, and the cause of that, car accident or sports injury, stroke, and then if they had any specific learning disability in reading, math, or writing. Okay, so again, you're not being asked to be the expert in all of these topics, just a format for the student to let you know what might impact their learning in the classroom. And then I love this question here because it offers a little bit of self-reflection for the student, asking them what they think might help with their learning. So maybe they think they might need breaks, extra breaks, extra time, testing in a private room, preferential seating. Some people like to sit right near the front. Some people need to be closer to the door, etc. So when you're going through all of these questions, it's not to label them or give them a diagnosis because, we can't do that. We're not the professionals who are going to diagnose people. And we're also not trying to pin something on them like, oh, you've got this. We're not trying to, it's not like some sort of screening tool where we're saying, oh, I'm sorry, we don't help people who have this disability. What we're really trying to get at is what is going to impact their learning in the classroom. We want to be prepared for that ahead of time to try to offer them the services that we can. And we also don't have special education services in adult education, so we have to try to kind of come up with it ourselves. If we have a commitment to working with students who have disabilities, and we should, then we have to try to do the best that we can. So we're not trying to label people here, we're just trying to help people. If anybody, or sometimes people with disabilities might have some other professional people in their lives. They might have caseworkers, social workers, legal guardian, and if they do, if they check yes, that they do have those people, it's a good idea to have them sign a consent for release of information. So they're giving you permission to speak with these other professionals or people in their lives in order to gain more information about how you can best help them. And so you need to make sure that you get their permission for that, and, are going through the proper privacy requirements. So just good to have them sign that. Okay, so there's a lot of questions, I think, in the chat. Let's see, take a look at that for a minute? Here we go. Oh,
I just have a question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
So for some reason, I'm not seeing the page that you're sharing. Is there a way you could put the link to the form that you're showing just in the chat?
Yes, I'll do that. Okay, are other people seeing the screen, or is that what's happening for everybody? Hope it's not happening for everybody.
I think it's just me because there was a response saying that other people could see it. So I don't know what what the problem is, but
Okay, all right, great.
thank you.
Okay, yep, sure. So I'm just going to go back to.
It's on your website, right?
It's the website. That's.
But was it a specific form on the website?
So right now, what I'm doing is I'm just been sharing the link to the website, and at the end of the presentation, I have like all the specific links as well.
Okay, okay, no
Yeah.
problem. I don't want to interrupt.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, so let's see. Okay.
No worries. I can just listen too. That's fine.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so far we have talked about how if you add that one question, yes or no question, asking if people have had uh, um, any challenges to their learning, then you can um, follow up with the supplemental disability registration form, which is what I just showed you, and conduct an interview with that person to gain some more information about them. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at right now. And I just wanted to put this slide in here because this is maybe going a little bit beyond the scope of this particular workshop. But I just wanted to let you know that like once you have that information from that interview, you've gained all this really interesting information about a student, then what, right? So something needs to happen with that. And I put my title of the slide here, Create a Student Needs Summary, because like I said before, in adult education, we don't have IEPs or anything really official or legal like that. So it's like maybe we call it a student needs summary, or maybe you might call it something else. But um, this is something that would probably be done by a teacher, but I'm just sort of mentioning it to here to you guys so that you can kind of be aware that this might be the process that would happen next, right? So you've conducted that interview, maybe then you combine it with taking a look at the adult learner intervention on our website, where you're going to be able to go through a process where you are looking at these different learning challenges that a person has and maybe getting down to the root cause of them and some strategies that you can use to work with them in the classroom or that the teacher can. So kind of putting all that together, and then just being aware that if you need any assistive or adaptive equipment from Panda, that we're here to help you with that as well. And if we don't have it, we can oftentimes try to buy it and loan it to you that way. So that's something that, again, that's probably more for the teacher, but just to be aware that we do have the resources on the Panda website, or even in consultation with us to sort of take the next step and be able to use the information that you just got from that interview. Okay, so then I also want to talk a little bit about testing accommodations. Excuse me. So every student with a disability has the right to receive accommodations in both the classroom and in testing. And if we are not identifying students with a disability until like after they've had a pre-test and then they've been in the classroom for a little while and take a post-test and all that, it's just kind of like delaying the whole process. So it's really great. Another great thing about asking students outright if they have any, anything that might impact their learning, then you can give them some testing accommodations right away. Okay, so I'm going back to the website again. I'm going back to the Panda website. And one of the categories on the side of the website is accommodations. So under this page on the website, there's like an overview about what that means, accommodations, and then different kinds of accommodations available in different kinds of scenarios. So probably in terms of intake strategy or, the intake process, we're thinking about CASAS or TABE testing. So both of those are here and you can get a little bit more information about the accommodations that are available through CASAS. And if I go, I'm just going to CASAS here, but I think we have the same information under TABE. Just a little note from Brad Haskamp, who's our leader. This is the guidance that he has for programs regarding testing accommodations. Okay, so I'm trying to put it right here in the middle of the screen. Okay, test accommodations must comply with publisher guidelines. Beyond that, no special documentation or permission is required to provide accommodations on the TABE or CASAS test. Okay, so you don't have to like apply anywhere. You don't have to like somehow get permission or try to get some sort of like official documentation from the student on their part. Nope, you don't have to do that. Test administrators need only to provide the same accommodations at the pre and post test. Okay, so we've got to do the same thing pre and post. And um, he writes, note that it may be helpful to document accommodations provided in the event that the folks involved in post-testing were not those initially involved in the pre-testing. Okay, in other words, document what you're doing somewhere. Again, it is up to local programs whether and how to keep such documentation. So that's a question that you could think about in your own program, in your own situation. I know that it is possible to make a note in the, I'm not an expert in SID, you guys are more than I am, but I think there's a notes place, spot, page or something that some people have access to where you can make a note. So you're going to want to note like what the accommodations were on what test and make sure that that information is available somehow so that the same thing happens during the post-test. Okay, so as far as like what are accommodations in general, like what might some of them be? Basically, extra time, so up to 1.5 times the amount of time that the standard time. Testing in a private room. You still need to have some sort of supervision or proctoring, but not necessarily, from my understanding, not necessarily the person, you don't necessarily need to be sitting in the same room with the person, but somewhere where it's accessible, where you could check in on them. So private room, not in the middle of the classroom necessarily, but still sort of not too far away. And then breaks as needed. So those are just like, they're pretty standard accommodations. They do not affect the validity of the CASAS test. And those could be given above board. I mean, across the board, right? You might at some point find someone needs more specific accommodations and so there are on CASAS and TABE, there are lists of things that are more specific, and by that I mean something like maybe taking a large print, taking the test with large print, testing booklet. Panda actually has large print tests for TABE and CASAS goals and steps. And we've got the latest versions of those. So if you need to borrow large print testing materials, we've got some. Or for a person with low vision, they could have the text of the test read aloud to them. Or somebody with mobility challenges, for instance, might have somebody who's a scribe who's going to mark the answer for them. So again, those don't change the validity of the test, but you just need to make sure that you're doing the same thing for the beginning, for the pre and the post, and that you're making a note of it. Okay, I just have a couple more things, and then maybe we'll get to some questions. Hopefully, anything that coming up in the chat. Okay, so there's a couple of like big sort of questions that arise, and I am really interested in what people might say because, because this might be difficult. Like number one, who's going to conduct this interview, right? I think it could be pretty straightforward to get that one question into the process, but then the supplemental form, which is asking them in more detail to go through what challenges they might have, who's going to do that? Is it going to be the person who's doing the registration? Are they going to have the time, right, to just kind of pivot to this longer interview situation? Is it or is it going to be some other designated person? So if they check yes on that box, on that one question, does that then is there someone else who's going to come into play, who's going to like take it from there? And when might that happen, right? Or perhaps is it going to be the classroom teacher that does it? So maybe the intake staff is responsible for finding out if the person does have a disability, if they have disclosed that with that one question, and then maybe it's going to be the teacher's responsibility to find out more and kind of put together some accommodations for that person. So I think obviously every program is a little bit different. Kind of how people roles and responsibilities and jobs and so forth within the program. So this is going to sort of take some discussion, like who's going to do that? How do we make time for that? Those are always the big questions. And then the other question that I'm kind of interested in is how do we maintain confidentiality in all of this process? So back, when I first started doing this with my students, doing that supplemental intake interview, confidentiality for me meant that I put it in a filing cabinet and I kept the filing cabinet locked, right? It was a piece of paper and it was in my locked filing cabinet. It wasn't on any computer system. And then when they left, it was shredded. But now many programs don't have paper files for students anymore. So how do you maintain confidentiality? What happens with that piece of paper? And like, where does it go? Where does it stay? And then what happens when the student leaves? Is this information put on SID? How confidential is that? I'm not really sure, who could see it and who could not see it. And then if it goes with the student to their next program, if they do go somewhere else. So those are just some kind of questions that uh, I don't necessarily have the answers to right now, but maybe some people have some thoughts or something that they would like to share. Okay, so we're going to talk about that, but I believe you guys will have access to all of these slides, so you can take a look at all these Panda resources that I've shared with you. And on this slide, I've linked them directly to like the page on the website. It's going to take you right there. So just the website in general, but also that adult learner intervention. That's kind of like the flow chart or the process to identify the root cause of someone's challenges. The page that has all those disability categories pop right up, so you could sort of like check out, if you're interested with someone who has a specific learning disorder or vision loss or something, if you want to learn a little bit more about it. And then this is the form. These are the forms right here, the supplemental disability registration forms. So that one question and then the other form. And here's a link to our page all about testing accommodations. Okay, so we do have a little extra time, a few minutes here, so I might just stop sharing and so I can see you guys and see what's going on in the chat. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see.
This is a really great time to ask your questions because this is so hugely important to make the intake process as inclusive as possible. So Sheila is a great person to ask. And so any questions at all, please ask.
Okay, well, just please feel free to, oh, yay, someone raised a hand. Yes, Gabby.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. This is awesome. I think this is a great thing for us in what we do to implement in our intake process. My question is, since you were talking about all this, is legal? It's okay to ask this question? It won't be offended to the students if we do it to everybody, because some you can tell, but some you don't.
That's a really great question. Thank you so much, Gabby, for that. Yes, it's perfectly okay to ask the question, but it's also perfectly okay for students not to answer the question or not to answer any of the questions. So it's a completely voluntary process. And it's also not something, again, you know, I guess we need to be sensitive and aware of how we're presenting it, that we are making it low stakes and not making people feel like they're being evaluated or whether they're going to get turned down for services because they disclose a disability. That we're really just trying to find out if there's some way that we're going to be able to help them, if there's anything with their learning that they've seen, noticed about themselves, or even had an official diagnosis for, so that we want to be aware of that to try to help them. But you're right that there is definitely some stigma around it, and people don't want to be put in any kind of category like that. Sometimes, some people are. So that's okay. I mean, some people will say no, and that's okay. I'm not here to, you know, question anybody or like challenge anybody about how they're going to answer this question. Um, so it's purely something that's voluntary, and maybe maybe people will feel a certain level of um, I mean, maybe it'll just kind of spark their interest a little bit that you're even asking the question, right? And maybe people will, maybe not right then and there in the intake process. Maybe some people it'll come a little bit later to the classroom teacher, but yeah, that's a good question. I hope I answered it okay.
Actually, now I remember we have that question in our intake form.
Great.
Yes, we do.
Okay, good, excellent. Yes, and if it's there and everybody's being asked it, or yeah, asked it, however you do your intake, it's being presented to everybody, then that's okay. It's not like you're pulling it out when you see somebody who might have a disability, pull out the question, but everybody has the question. So, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I hope that the when you ask that question, and then I hope that the follow-up is also something that feels manageable. I feel like that's almost where it's a little bit harder to do, right? Because then you've got to do the follow-up interview, and then the teacher has to figure out what it is that they need to assist the students. So, but yeah, I do think it's so important to present a welcoming um, you know, face to students who are coming in, because people can be very vulnerable if they're coming in and maybe they're feeling nervous about starting up school again. Um, it's so important to be inclusive and make them feel welcome, to make them feel like you care and that you're interested, you're going to try, you're going to see what you can do to help them meet their goals. And you know, many people are not going to share, but I've had my experience is that a lot of people do want to share. You know, a lot of people are interested in telling you things. And it's a privilege in a way for you to be in a position where people are willing to share things, you know, mental health challenges, especially, I think, mental health challenges, substance use disorder, post-traumatic stress syndrome, things like that. You know, those are things that are very personal. So being able to um, be an accepting person, and to let that person know that that's they're not going to get written off right away just because of that. That's pretty powerful, I think. Okay. Well, any other questions, or can please put them in the chat. I guess I'll just say that I have things I've come across most common are mental health challenges in my work. Of course, I know people are coming to me with stroke and brain injury, so I know that they have that. But then I also very often have people with mental health challenges, anxiety and depression, sometimes post-traumatic stress, a lot of vision problems, a lot of mobility problems as well. And that's maybe those are the most common ones that I have come across. And yeah, so I don't know if that's helpful or not. Okay, well. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your attending. And again, please contact me if you have any questions.